The People's Liberation Army Navy, also known as the PLA Navy, is the naval warfare branch of the People's Liberation Army, the armed wing of the Communist Party of China and by default the National Armed Force of the People's Republic of China. The plan can trace its lineage to naval units fighting during the Chinese Civil War and was established in September 1950. Throughout the 1950s and early 1960s, the Soviet Union provided assistance to the plan in the form of naval advisors and export of equipment and technology. Until the late 1980s, the plan was largely a riverine and littoral force. However, by the 1990s, following the fall of the Soviet Union and a shift towards a more forward-oriented foreign and security policy, the leaders of the Chinese military were freed from worrying over land border disputes, and instead turned their attention towards the seas. This led to the development of the People's Liberation Army Navy into a Green Water Navy by 2009. Before the 1990s, the plan had traditionally played a subordinate role to the People's Liberation Army ground force. In 2008, General Qian Luo confirmed that China plans to operate a small fleet of aircraft carriers in the near future, but for the purpose of regional defense as opposed to global reach. As of 2013, PLA officials have also outlined plans to operate in the first and second island chains. Chinese strategists term the development of the plan from a green water navy into a regional blue water defensive and defensive navy. The People's Liberation Army Navy is composed of 5 branches: the People's Liberation Army Navy Submarine Force, the People's Liberation Army Navy Surface Force, the People's Liberation Army Navy Coastal Defense Force, the People's Liberation Army Marine Corps and the People's Liberation Army Naval Air Force. With a personnel strength of 255,000 servicemen and women, including 10,000 Marines and 26,000 Naval Air Force personnel, it is the second largest navy in the world in terms of tonnage, only behind the United States Navy, and has the largest number of major combatants of any navy. History. The plan traces its lineage to units of the Republic of China Navy who defected to the People's Liberation Army towards the end of the Chinese Civil War. In 1949, Mao Zedong asserted that, to oppose imperialist aggression, we must build a powerful navy. During the landing operation on Hainan Island, the Communists used wooden junks fitted with mountain guns as both transport and warships against the Republic of China Navy. The Naval Academy was set up at Dalian on the 22nd of November 1949, mostly with Soviet instructors. The Navy was established in September 1950 by consolidating regional naval forces under Joint Staff Department Command in Jiangyun, now in Taizhou, Jiangsu Province. It then consisted of a motley collection of ships and boats acquired from the Kuomintang forces. The Naval Air Force was added 2 years later. By 1954, an estimated 2,500 Soviet naval advisors were in China, possibly one advisor to every 30 Chinese naval personnel, and the Soviet Union began providing modern ships. With Soviet assistance, the Navy reorganized in 1954 and 1955 into the North Sea Fleet, East Sea Fleet, and South Sea Fleet, and a corps of admirals and other naval officers was established from the ranks of the ground forces. In shipbuilding, the Soviets first assisted the Chinese, then the Chinese copied Soviet designs without assistance, and finally the Chinese produced vessels of their own design. Eventually, Soviet assistance progressed to the point that a joint Sino-Soviet Pacific Ocean fleet was under discussion. 1950s and 1960s. Through the upheavals of the late 1950s and 1960s, the Navy remained relatively undisturbed. Under the leadership of Minister of National Defense Lin Biao, large investments were made in naval construction during the frugal years immediately after the Great Leap Forward. During the Cultural Revolution, a number of top naval commissars and commanders were purged, and naval forces were used to suppress a revolt in Wuhan in July 1967, but the service largely avoided the turmoil affecting the country. Although it paid lip service to Mao and assigned political commissars aboard ships, the Navy continued to train, build, and maintain the fleets as well the coastal defense and aviation arms, as well as in the performance of its mission. 1970s and 1980s. In the 1970s, when approximately 20% of the defense budget was allocated to naval forces, the Navy grew dramatically. The conventional submarine force increased from 35 to 100 boats, the number of missile-carrying ships grew from 20 to 200, and the production of larger surface ships, including support ships for ocean-going operations, increased. The Navy also began development of nuclear attack submarines and nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines. In the 1980s, under the leadership of Chief Naval Commander Liu Huaking, the Navy developed into a regional naval power. The naval construction continued at a level somewhat below the 1970s rate. Liu Huaking was an Army officer who spent most of his career in administrative positions involving science and technology. It was not until 1988 that the People's Liberation Army Navy was led by a naval officer. Liu was also very close to Deng Xiaoping, as his modernization efforts were very much in keeping with Deng's national policies. While under his leadership, naval construction yards produced fewer ships than the 1970s. Greater emphasis was placed on technology and qualitative improvement. Modernization efforts also encompassed higher educational and technical standards for personnel, reformulation of the traditional coastal defense doctrine and force structure in favor of more green water operations, and training in naval combined arms operations involving submarine, surface, naval aviation, and coastal defense forces. Examples of the expansion of China's capabilities were the 1980 recovery of an intercontinental ballistic missile in the Western Pacific by a 20-ship fleet, extended naval operations in the South China Sea in 1984 and 1985, and the visit of 2 naval ships to 3 South Asian nations in 1985. In 1982, the Navy conducted a successful test of an underwater-launched ballistic missile. The Navy also had some success in developing a variety of surface-to-surface and air-to-surface missiles, improving basic capabilities. In 1986, the Navy's order of battle included 2 Chia-class SSBNs armed with 12 CSSN-3 missiles and 3 Han-class SSNs armed with 6 Sai-2 cruise missiles. In the late 1980s, major deficiencies reportedly remained in anti-submarine warfare, mine warfare, naval electronics, and naval aviation capabilities. The PLA Navy was ranked in 1987 as the 3rd largest navy in the world, although naval personnel had comprised only 12% of PLA strength. In 1987, the Navy consisted of the Naval Headquarters in Beijing, 3 fleet commands, the North Sea Fleet based at Qingdao, Shandong, the East Sea Fleet based at Ningbo, and the South Sea Fleet based at Zhanjiang, Guangdong, and about 2,000 ships. The 350,000-person Navy included Naval Air Force units of 34,000 men, the Coastal Defense Forces of 38,000, and the Marine Corps of 56,500. Navy Headquarters, which controlled the 3 fleet commands, was subordinate to the PLA General Staff Department. In 1987, China's 1,500 km coastline was protected by more than 100 diesel-powered Romeo and Whiskey-class submarines, which could remain at sea only a limited time. Inside this protective ring and within range of shore-based aircraft were destroyers and frigates mounting Styx anti-ship missiles, depth-charge projectors, and guns up to 130 mm. Any invader penetrating the destroyer and frigate protection would have been swarmed by almost 900 fast attack craft. Stormy weather limited the range of these small boats, however, and curtailed air support. Behind the inner ring were Coastal Defense Force personnel operating naval shore batteries of Styx missiles and guns, backed by ground force units deployed in depth. Into the 21st century. As the 21st century approached, the plan began to transition to an offshore defensive strategy that entailed more out-of-area operations away from its traditional territorial waters. Between 1989 and 1993, the training ship Zhanghe paid ports visits to Hawaii, Thailand, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India. Plan vessels visited Vladivostok in 1993, 1994, 1995, and 1996. Plan task groups also paid visits to Indonesia in 1995, North Korea in 1997, New Zealand, Australia, and the Philippines in 1998, Malaysia, Tanzania, South Africa, the United States, and Canada in 2000, and India, Pakistan, France, Italy, Germany, Britain, Hong Kong, Australia, and New Zealand in 2001. In March 1997, the Luhu-class guided missile destroyer Harbin, the Luda-class guided missile destroyer Zhuhai, and the replenishment oiler Nankiang began the PLA Navy's first circumnavigation of the Pacific Ocean, a 98-day voyage with port visits to Mexico, Peru, Chile, and the United States, including Pearl Harbor and San Diego. The flotilla was under the command of Vice Admiral Wang Yongguo, the Commander-in-Chief of the South Sea Fleet. The Luhu-class guided missile destroyer Qingdao and the replenishment oiler Taikang completed the PLA Navy's first circumnavigation of the world, a 123-day voyage covering 32,000 nautical miles between the 15th of May to the 23rd of September 2002. Port visits included Changi, Singapore, Alexandria, Egypt, Axis, Turkey, Sevastopol, Ukraine, Piraeus, Greece, Lisbon, Portugal, Fortaleza, Brazil, Guayaquil, Ecuador, Callao, Peru, and Papeete in French Polynesia. The PLA naval vessels participated in naval exercises with the French frigates Novos and Prairial, as well as exercises with the Peruvian Navy. The flotilla was under the command of Vice Admiral Ding Yiping, the Commander-in-Chief of the North Sea Fleet, and Captain Li Yuji was the commanding officer of the Qingdao. Overall, between 1985 and 2006, planned naval vessels visited 18 Asian-Pacific nations, 4 South American nations, 8 European nations, 3 African nations, and 3 North American nations. In 2003, the plan conducted its first joint naval exercises during separate visits to Pakistan and India. Bilateral naval exercises were also carried out with exercises with the French, British, Australian, Canadian, Philippine, and United States navies. On the 26th of December 2008, the plan dispatched a task group consisting of the guided missile destroyer the guided missile destroyer Wuhan, and the supply ship Weishenhu to the Gulf of Aden to participate in anti-piracy operations off the coast of Somalia. A team of 16 Chinese Special Forces members from its Marine Corps armed with attack helicopters were on board. Since then, China has maintained a 3-ship flotilla of 2 warships and 1 supply ship in the Gulf of Aden by assigning ships to the Gulf of Aden on a 3-monthly basis. Other recent plan incidents include the 2001 Hainan Island incident, a major submarine accident in 2003, and naval incidents involving the USMSC-operated ocean surveillance ships Victorious and Impeccable during 2009. At the occasion of the 60th anniversary of the plan, 52 to 56 vessels were shown in maneuvers off Qingdao in April 2009, including previously unseen nuclear submarines. The demonstration was seen as a sign of the growing status of China, while the CMC chairman, Hu Jintao, indicated that China is neither seeking regional hegemony nor entering an arms race. Predictions by Western analysts that the plan would outnumber the U.S. and submarine forces early as 2011 have failed to come true because the PRC curtailed both imports and domestic production of submarines. Between 5 to 12 July 2013, a 7-ship task force from the Northern Fleet joined warships from the Russian Pacific Fleet to participate in joint C-2013 bilateral naval maneuvers held in the Peter the Great Bay of the Sea of Japan. To date, joint C-2013 was the largest naval drills yet undertaken by the People's Liberation Army Navy with a foreign navy. On the 2nd of April 2015, during the violent aftermath of a coup d'état in Yemen and amid an international bombing campaign, the plan helped 10 countries get the citizens out of Yemen safely, evacuating them aboard a missile frigate from the besieged port city of Aden. The operation was described by Reuters as the first time that China's military has helped other countries evacuate the people during an international crisis. PRC military expert Yin Duo has said that due to present weaknesses in the plan's ability to replenish the ships at sea, the future aircraft carriers will be forced to operate in pairs. In a TV interview, Zhang Zhaozhong suggests otherwise, saying China is unlikely to put all her egg in one basket, and that the Navy will likely to rotate between her carrier then to deploy them all at once. Beginning in 2009, China orders 4 ZUBR-class LCAC from Ukraine and board 4 more from the Hellenic Navy. These hovercrafts LCACs were viewed to be a direct threat to Taiwan's pro-independence movement as well as the conflict over Diaoyu Islands. China is continually shifting the power balance in Asia by building up its military. These machines are built to send troops and armored vehicles onto beaches in a fast manner, acting as a landing craft. Organization. The plan is organized into several departments for purposes of command, control and coordination. Main operating forces are organized into fleets, each with its own headquarters, a commander and a political commissar. All plan headquarters are subordinate to the PLA General Staff Department and the chairman of the Central Military Committee. Fleets. The People's Liberation Army Navy is divided into 3 fleets. The North Sea Fleet, based in the Yellow Sea and headquartered in Qingdao, Shandong Province. The East Sea Fleet, based in the East China Sea and headquartered in Ningbo, Zhejiang Province. The South Sea Fleet, based in the South China Sea and headquartered in Zhanjiang, Guangdong Province. Each fleet consists of surface forces, submarine forces, coastal defense units, and aircraft branches. Planned Submarine Force. The People's Liberation Army Navy Submarine Force is one of 5 branches in the Navy and consists of all submarines, both nuclear-powered and conventionally powered, in service with the plan. They are organized into flotillas spread across the 3 main fleets. The PRC is the last of the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council which has not conducted an operational ballistic missile submarine patrol because of institutional problems. It operates a fleet of 70 submarines. Plan Surface Force. The People's Liberation Army Surface Force is one of 5 branches in the Navy and consists of all surface warfare ships in service with the Plan. They are organized into flotillas spread across the 3 main fleets. Plan Coastal Defense Force. The Plan Coastal Defense Force is a land-based fighting force and branch of the Plan with a strength of around 25,000 personnel. Also known as the Coastal Defense Troops, they serve to defend China's coastal areas from invasion via amphibious landings or air attack. Throughout the 1960s to 1980s, the Coastal Defense Force was focused on defending China's coast from a possible Soviet seaborne invasion. With the fall of the Soviet Union, the threat of an amphibious invasion of China has diminished, and therefore the branch is often considered to no longer to be a vital component of the Plan, especially as the surface warships of the Plan continue to improve in terms of anti-ship and air defense capabilities. Today the primary weapons of the Coastal Defense Troops are the Hi-2, YJ-82, and C-602 anti-ship missiles. PLA Marine Corps. The PLA Marine Corps was originally established in the 1950s and then re-established in 1979 under Plan organization. It consists of around 12,000 Marines organized into 2 6,000-man brigades and is based in the South China Sea with the South Sea Fleet. The Marine Corps are considered elite troops, and are rapid mobilization forces trained primarily in amphibious warfare and as paratroopers to establish a beachhead or act as a fighting spearhead during operations against enemy targets. The Marines are equipped with the standard Type 95 assault rifle as well as other small arms and personal equipment, and a blue literal camouflage uniform as standard. The Marines are also equipped with armored fighting vehicles, artillery, and anti-aircraft artillery systems and short-range surface-to-air missiles. With the Plan's accelerating efforts to expand its capabilities beyond territorial waters, it would be likely for the Marine Corps to play a greater role in terms of being an offshore expeditionary force similar to the USMC in Royal Marines. PLA Naval Air Force. The People's Liberation Army Naval Air Force is the Air Force of the Plan and has a strength of around 25,000 personnel and 690 aircraft. It operates similar aircraft to the People's Liberation Army Air Force, including fighter aircraft, bombers, strike aircraft, tankers, reconnaissance aircraft, electronic warfare aircraft, maritime patrol aircraft, transport aircraft, and helicopters of various roles. The PLA Naval Air Force has traditionally received older aircraft than the PLAAF and has taken less ambitious steps towards mass modernization. Advancements in new technologies, weaponry and aircraft acquisition were made after 2000. With the introduction of China's first aircraft carrier, Liaoning, the Naval Air Force is for the first time conducting aircraft carrier operations. Naval air bases includes North Sea Fleet, Dalian, Qingdao, Jingxi, Jiyuan, Liang, Jiaoshan, Xingtai, Lishan, Anyang, Changzhou, Liangxiang and Shanhai Guan. East Sea Fleet, Danyang, Daishan, Shanghai, Ningbo, Luqiao, Feidong and Shitanqiao. South Sea Fleet, Foluo, Haikou, Lingshui, Sanya, Gaiping, Jialishi and Lingaling. Relationship with other maritime organizations of China. The Plan is complemented by paramilitary maritime services such as the China Coast Guard. The Chinese Coast Guard was previously not under an independent command, considered part of the armed police, under the local Border Defense Force Command, prior to its reorganization and consolidation as an unified service. It was formed from the integration of several formerly separate services: Haiguang, People's Armed Police and Sea Militia. The CMS performed mostly coastal and ocean search and rescue, a patrol patrols. The CMS received quite a few large patrol ships that significantly enhanced their operations, while Haiguang, militia, police and other services operated hundreds of small patrol craft. For maritime patrol services, these craft are usually quite well armed with machine guns and 37mm anti-aircraft guns. In addition, these services operated their own small aviation units to assist the maritime patrol capabilities, with Haiguang and CMS operating a handful of Harbin Z-9 helicopters, and a maritime patrol aircraft based on the Harbin Y-12 SDOL transport. Every coastal province has 1 to 3 Coast Guard squadrons, 3 squadrons, Fujian, Guangdong, 2 squadrons, Liaoning, Shandong, Zhejiang, Hainan, Guangxi, 1 squadron, Hebei, Tianjin, Jiangsu, Shanghai. Ranks. The ranks in the People's Liberation Army Navy are similar to those of the People's Liberation Army Ground Force. The current system of officer ranks and insignia dates from 1988 and is a revision of the ranks and insignia used from 1955 to 1965. The rank of High Jinyiji Shangjiang was never held and was abolished in 1994. With the official introduction of the Type 07 uniforms, all officer insignia are on either shoulders or sleeves depending on the type of uniform used. The current system of enlisted ranks and insignia dates from 1998.